Hello there! So, you might have been wondering which distribution is the right one for you, right? Whether you are a new Linux user or an experienced one, well, basically, if you're very experienced, then you probably already have an idea which distribution is the right one for you, but you might still be like distro hopping along the way and searching for that like completely perfect one, right? And let me tell you a bit of a story, background story on myself, right? So I started with Debian in many years ago, and it was like a first love for me. And I have tried many different distros in during the years, right? And each one of them brings something unique to them. And I always tend to go back to Debian because I kind of got used to it, right? It just works so well for me. And this was the case up until I started this YouTube channel. And as I started exploring new software and basically new everything, I started to have this need to have new packages, right? And this is something that Debian does not offer. And don't get me started on Debian Seed. I don't want to talk about it. So the reason why I switched from Debian to something that offers new packages was because I needed those packages, right? So I kind of tried Arch and I kind of clicked with it. And I hear a lot of times that people jump directly on Arch, like complete new Linux users, and that's a bit odd, but I guess if people are skilled, then there's no reason why not, right? And but a lot of people tend to jump on Arch because they heard it's the difficult one, it's the most difficult distribution, and I want to be the Uber geek who conquers the difficult Arch. Something I use Arch, by the way, right? So I can say this and be honest about it. And that's kind of a wrong approach, but because Arch is not really a difficult distribution, because you only need to know the basics and you need to be able to read, because ArchWiki is really good. So if you can read like text on the screen and instructions, then you will be able to install Arch, and everything on Arch is tuned to a very high standard. Packages just work. Most of the time you don't need to configure anything special. It's actually a really fairly easy distribution. The most difficult distributions out there are those who don't really work properly and you need to fix them all the time. That's the difficult part in the Linux world. So if you pick the distribution which doesn't quite give you what you need, if it breaks often or if it doesn't have the packages that you need, then you need to compile them on your own. So this part is what requires a little bit of a learning curve, right? And by learning curve, it's not that difficult to download a tarball and compile it and install it. What is difficult is to be able to track all of the things that you have manually installed. And if you want to uninstall it, you need to like worry about where did the install script put those things and how would you go about uninstalling it in order to make it clean after the uninstall procedure. So I'm talking about manual installation, right? Not the packages. Packages are usually fine in most distributions, whether it's Pacman driven or apt or DNF or whatever. All that is good. So the differences between all of the distributions is usually like in small things. Packages availability. Does this distribution have all of the software that you need in their repository? And I'll get to FlatHub in a bit. Does this distribution offer you the drivers that you need? Usually it's just a matter of having a new enough kernel, right? If you're on an Intel graphics card or AMD one, usually it's just about the kernel version. And if you have NVIDIA, then in most cases, kernel version doesn't matter too much, but there will be more or less manual installation of your graphics card drivers, right? So from that perspective, it's a little bit different. But usually, I tell people to try to stay away from NVIDIA if possible. It's just more pleasant experience if you don't have to deal with drivers. And that's actually what I like about Linux. You know, I have a Radeon card, and I used to have an NVIDIA RTX, and this was the reason why I switched, because I just wanted to experience this out of the box experience, right? So that's all it took for me to take Radeon as granted, right? It just works, and it's a pleasurable experience overall. So the difference is packages availability. How new packages do you need? If you're a developer, sometimes you need like new packages, but you don't really have to have the bleeding edge distribution for that. You can use stuff like DistroBox, because that offers you the way to download maybe Debian SID, which will offer you a lot of bleeding edge packages for your development pleasure. All of the latest compiler packages, latest Python, latest whatever, right, that you need for development. So from that point of view, you can still use a stable distribution such as Debian, right? It can be 2 years old. You can use Ubuntu 2 years old. Ubuntu actually comes with perhaps 2 years old packages if you are using an LTS version, but then again, it will give you a kernel update like every half a year or a little bit more. And that's also perfectly fine. You get like driver updates like 4 times in these 2 years. Then again, you can go with Fedora. That one gives you all of the latest packages every half a year, so like twice a year. And above all that, you get the latest drivers basically immediately after they are released. And I'm talking about the kernel version again. So you get basically every kernel version with Fedora, and that's also neat. There is also these nuances, which is the default desktop environment if you're out of the box desktop user, right? So with Fedora, you'll get GNOME. With Debian, you'll get whatever. With Arch, you will get whatever. With the Open Mandriva, you'll get KDE, Plasma, and etc. Right? So each one of those like focuses on maybe how would I put it, a Halo desktop distribution experience. But then again, most of the Linux distributions, you can absolutely install whichever desktop you want, right? The only problem comes if your desktop environment has some bugs that have been fixed upstream, but your distribution doesn't offer you updates for that if it's a stable one. So you have to wait like 2 years to get those updates. So from that perspective, you might want to think about some of the in-between versions, right? Some of the in-between variations of Linux distributions, because Arch Linux gives you all of the latest stuff all the time. But then again, you have to be able to read from the screen, because Arch Package Manager Pacman will give you heads up when there is some package upgrades that require your personal attention. If you don't read this text, you might break your system intentionally, and it will be your fault, not Arch's fault. So from that perspective, it's all about these nuances, right? Open Mandriva, they call it a rolling distribution, but it's not like Arch rolling. It's more like Debian rolling, but then again, it's more like Debian is the Arch. It's kind of like their family, right? It's like a stable rolling, because you're not getting the updates all of the time. What you're getting is, for example, the main the common Open Mandriva distribution is the one that they call Rome. They also have a stable one which releases roughly every a year and a half. They release it when it's ready, right? But the Rome releases every month. And how they release it, they call it rolling, right? But the fact is they have one above the Rome, which they call Cooker. And in the Cooker version, they cook packages. And once the packages are completely cooked, then they release the snapshot. And when the snapshot is released, then you can update your ROM to the new version, right? So let's say that they do it like once a month. So in between these 30 days, you will get almost none of the updates. You will get some of the updates, but usually it's very tiny subset of, let's say, hot fixes. But generally, you can expect like once a month or maybe more that you will get distribution update to the latest version. So they call it rolling, but I would call it a stable rolling, right? If that's your thing, if you don't want to be bothered with updates every day, then don't go with Arch Linux. Go with something like OpenMandriva. If you're fine with everything working exactly as it has been working for the past months, then stuff that releases every 2 years is perfectly fine. And there is stuff like in between, like I said, Fedora, and there are plenty more. Like you have hundreds of Linux distributions, and I think you should research into what matters to you. Do you want non very standard desktop environment? Are you a Hyperland user? If you're a Hyperland user, you might want to go with Nix or Arch, right? It's the ones that will offer you the most up-to-date experience with Hyperland. But also OpenMandriva will as well, and a couple of others. So it's not all black and white, right? If you are happy with XFCE, that one releases every 2 years, then it doesn't really matter which distribution you pick. But then again, you are maybe working with static web pages that you develop, and then you need the latest Hugo version. In that case, you might want to aim for something that will offer you the latest Hugo version. But then again, you can also download the Hugo binary. It's really easy to get. It's not a big deal. So from that perspective, it's all about package availability. I have been rambling for more than 10 minutes now, but I think I managed to give you an idea about what you should be looking at if you really don't know which Linux distribution is for you. I am not saying that you need to jump on Arch. Currently, Arch is what fits my needs. Debian used to be what has been like fitting my needs for a long time. I have tried Fedora as well, but didn't quite have the most pleasant experience with it. It's a subjective matter, right? It's a distribution enjoyed by many. So from that perspective, you don't really have to go with my words. Don't take my words for which is good, which is bad. Like read in between the lines and see if this distribution offers you the right cadence of package updates that is good for you. And for the end, there is something that I could call like packages hotfix. We have this Flatpak system, also Snaps, but Snaps is not available on all of the distributions. So let's talk about it a little bit later. And I'm going to try to wrap this up as fast as I can. So Flatpak. Flatpaks offer you a way to like patch the what your distribution is missing, but it's all about the graphical user interface, graphical applications. So for example, if you need the latest version of video editor, let's say you're using Kdenlive and you need the very latest version because the ones packaged with your distribution is buggy, then you will most probably be perfectly fine with downloading from FlatHub. FlatHub is it's a GNOME powered sponsored place, right? Which offers you you can see it as a completely different distribution of packages that sits on top of your distribution. So it's not really related to your distribution in any way because FlatHub has its own packages and its own libraries and dependencies. So if you pull Kdenlive, it will not sit on top of the Qt libraries that you have on your system, but it will instead pull all of the duplicates of the Qt libraries from the FlatHub that go along with this version of Kdenlive, and it will not use your own libraries. So from that perspective, it will like more than double your hard drive usage. But with modern hard drives, it's usually not that problematic. If you're tight with space on your hard drives, that could be a problem in theory, but for most of you, it will probably not be a problem. From my experience, it's really not that big of a deal. I'm just telling you how it works, right? So you can go to FlatHub website and see if there's a program version that you need, and if your distribution of choice will not offer the program version that you need, you will always be able to patch yourself with FlatHub. This is worth even for Arch Linux, right? Because not the Arch Linux does not have all of the packages in the universe. And once again, don't get me started on a user repository. For this video, that part is not important because I don't think new users who don't know what they are doing should be recommended Arch user repository. That is my subjective opinion, and that is what I am telling my viewers. So there is also Snaps, which is pretty similar into what the end result is, as Flatpak system is. It's just that it's not really available on all of the distributions. First of all, it requires systemd as the init system, which is not available on all distributions. And second, a lot of distributions don't really include it as an option, but usually it's just Debian based. Not just Debian based, but usually it comes down to Debian based distributions who offer snaps like out of the box experience. So from that perspective, if you need something like Visual Studio or Skype from Microsoft, then you might want to look into Debian based distributions, which will offer you in turn Snap System, and Snap System will give you a chance to download official Microsoft packages if that's what you need. Microsoft packages are also available as Flatpaks, but those are unofficial, not maintained by Microsoft. So I'm just giving you some heads up. It's not all about Microsoft packages, but there are some, let's call it exclusivity to the Snap system, because Snap system is maintained by Canonical, and Canonical is a somewhat bigger Linux related company, and those companies are friends with Microsoft, and you know how that works. So from that perspective, you might want to look into that as well. If you're a completely new user, I would actually maybe recommend checking out Zorin operating system, because that one will give you Debian packages and FlatHub and snaps all out of the box, and it's a fairly neat and clean experience. Also, the look and feel of the GNOME environment that they tuned with their special theming is fairly unique and looks good out of the box. So I think you will have a neat experience, with that distribution, until you realize which one is actually good for you. I'm saying only this to the completely new people, right? So what I want to ask now is, which is your favorite distribution, and more out of everything, why? Why did you come up with exactly that one? This is what I want to know. So just for the end of this video, I just want to thank all of my supporters, both on Ko-fi and on YouTube, and I'm going to list them in a couple of seconds on this part of the screen, or maybe it's this one, but nevertheless, I have been thinking about transitioning all of the, let's say, patronage to the Patreon, because for some reason everyone is there. So I'm going to link it up like now, and if you want to check it out, my new Patreon page, and you might want to support me and my work, I would be delighted to. But yeah, anyway, I have been rambling for far too long, and I'm going to see you in the next video.